did count down, but it was glitchy.
Oh.
Usually it says we're on the air. Hang on just 1 second. We're having some technical difficulties. Ron? Okay. Meeting will please come to order. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. We had some Webelos visit us here earlier tonight, so I'm going to ask them to please come up here on the dais, and we're going to ask you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody else would please stand. Oh, right over here, guys, right by me. Come on. Okay, so you guys, there's the flag. And when one of you says aye, I'll keep going, okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. As I said, this is a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Wilmette. We will call the matters in the order in which they appear on the printed agenda, and there are copies of the agenda on the table by the door, so you may want to have one so you can follow along to see when your matter will be called. Now, if you plan to address us tonight, we ask you please come up to the podium, please speak in the microphone and tell us who you are and where you live, as that may be relevant to the matter at hand. We ask that you speak clearly into the microphone so we can hear you, and because everything you say and everything we say is being recorded. And from those recordings, minutes of the meeting are prepared, and these minutes are available both at Village Hall and on our website at wilmette.com. Also, our village board meetings are televised on Local Access Channel 6 and on the internet. So if you look up, you can actually see the cameras. By televising our meetings, we make it easy for our neighbors in the community to follow the proceedings of the village board, to see the types of matters that come before us, the questions that we ask, the policies we create. And you guys, tomorrow, you can go to Wilmette website and look there. Actually, tonight, I think we post immediately now, and see yourselves leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, because that was on TV tonight. You can find archived videos of Village Board and other local government meetings on our website, and I'd like to personally thank all the residents of Wilmette who regularly tune into Channel 6 and pay attention to the workings of their local government. Now, before each meeting, the board receives a packet of agenda materials, and these materials are also posted on our website on the Friday before our meeting, so that residents and other interested parties can review the very same materials that the board members receive. This week's packet contained 566 pages. We've had an opportunity to review the information in the agenda packet. So if you do plan to address us tonight, we ask that you tell us the most relevant, the most important, and really the issues that you want us to focus on. Finally, we are community neighbors, and as such, we want our meetings to be as civil and courteous as possible. So as a courtesy to those around you, please take this time to turn off your cell phones and other devices. And while we're turning off our phones, would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Sullivan. Trustee Kennedy.
Here.
Trustee Dodd.
Here.
Trustee Kurzman.
Here.
Trustee Barrow. Trustee Plunkett.
Here.
President Polinsky.
Here. So 5 members is a quorum. As most of you know, Thursday is Thanksgiving, so there are some people who are away. Before we get moving through the agenda, I just want to say that the board will not be acting on or discussing item 3.8 tonight. That item will be tabled until the December 10th regular board meeting. Item 3.8 relates to the stormwater utility fee. There will be a meeting of the Municipal Services Committee of this board. That's a subset committee of the board members on December 10th at 8 a.m. At Village Hall. And there will be additional information presented by the staff to the trustees on the committee at that time. All Municipal Services Committee meetings are public meetings, so they're open to the public, and everyone's welcome to attend that meeting on the 10th and address the committee with any concerns they may have. So we'll move on to item 2, which is public comment. During public comment, individuals are allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board on an item which is not on the agenda. Members of the audience may address the board on matters which are on tonight's agenda when the particular matter is called. So is there any member of the audience who would like to address the board on a matter which is not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. As described on the printed agenda, items which are routine business that are not normally debated by the village board are placed on the consent agenda. And if you take a look at the agenda, all items that begin with the number 3 are on the consent agenda. So tonight that means starting on page 1 with item 3.1, includes all the items on page 2 and about 2/3 of the items on page 3, ending with item 3.21. Items on the consent agenda are up for approval tonight. If an item is not removed by a member of the audience and is not removed by one of the trustees, the item will be approved and it will not be discussed. So I'll begin by asking, is there any member of the audience who would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? May I see a show of hands? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to ask if there are any trustees that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda. Okay, may I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Trustee Kennedy.
Yes.
Trustee Dodd.
Yes.
Trustee Kurzman.
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett.
Aye.
President Polinsky.
Aye. So the motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. So if you're here for an item on the consent agenda, it was just approved. And I'll clarify for people who are here tonight. Again, all items beginning with the number 3 have been approved, and that includes Land Use Committee item 3.5. That was just approved. If you were here for that item, it's been approved. There'll be no further discussion of that item or any of the other items on the consent agenda. So you are free to leave, but of course, more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. And if you are leaving now, it is still early. I don't see anybody leaving, but in case people leave in a minute, it is still early. Plenty of time to stop by one of our downtown restaurants. And as an added incentive, I don't have one with me, but I assume they're on the table still. We now have a $5 coupon that is good at a handful of our participating downtown restaurants, good only tonight. So if you do head out to one of our restaurants after the board meeting, grab the coupon, and you'll get $5 off, subject to terms and conditions. Next item on the agenda is item 4, which is the report of officers. The first item is item 4.1, which is a request for an executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2, sub C, sub 1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. We will move on now to the report from our village manager, Mr. Frenzer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just 2 quick reminders for our residents. This week is the final week for collection under our 2019 yard waste and curbside composting program. Both programs will resume again during the week of October 6, 2020. Please ensure that your remaining yard waste or food scrap compost is set out for collection no later than 7 a.m. on your scheduled collection day. We'd also like to remind residents that next week is the final week for leaf collection. The map with the different zones is on our webpage at wilmette.com. Please remember that next week is the last week for collection, and every zone of the village will get at least 1 collection day next week. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Frenzer. Next up is a report from our Corporation Counsel, Mr. Stein.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
So next item on the agenda is item 5, and that's the report of the Liquor Control Commissioner. There's no report tonight. We'll move on to our standing committee meetings. I'm just about to give the Weeblos a high sign. There's probably time for them to go. But first up, as always, is the Land Use Committee. Trustee Barrow is not here today, but all items were covered on consent. So we'll move to Trustee Kennedy, Finance Committee.
Yes. First, I'd like to express my deep gratitude, and I feel confident that all of our trustees and President Belinsky share this sentiment, for all the careful thought, hard work, and long hours the village staff put into crafting the 2020 budget. For anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to look at it online, it runs about 450 very dense pages. In addition to compiling this document, the staff spent many more hours getting all of us up to speed on the issues, answering our questions, and addressing our concerns and our recommendations. We truly could not do this without them. And as a new board members, Trustee Barrow and I are particularly grateful for their patience and their assistance as we work through our very first budget season. I would particularly like to thank Tim Frenzer, Michael Brayman, Melinda Malloy, John Presner, Bridget Berger-Raish, Dan Manis, Jorge Cruz, and Nabil Kwafiche for their hard work on the budget, and Jeff Stein for crafting the ordinances needed to effectuate it. Thank you very, very, very much to all of you. And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Frenzer.
Actually, first we have to do the public hearing. So item 6.21 is the public hearing. So just if you would, so item 6.21 is public hearing on the Village of Wilmette's fiscal 2020 budget. So if you would announce that, and then I will run the public hearing.
Okay, I stand corrected. I'm announcing first that there's a public hearing on the Village's Wilmette fiscal year 2020 budget.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Kennedy. So I now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard on the matter of the Village of Wilmette's fiscal 2020 budget? May I see a show of hands? Okay. Since I see no one, I will now declare the public hearing closed. We have to do that as a matter of state law, by the way. All right, now we move on to 6.22, which is the adoption of the ordinance. So a motion, please.
I'd move that we adopt the budget for 2020 as prepared by the staff and as included in the packet this week.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. As we all know, the staff has been working on the budget for a number of months now. There's been several discussions of the budget in public meetings, so I will turn it over to Mr. Frenzer for a brief presentation, and then ask the trustees if they have any final questions for the staff.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you mentioned, we've gone through this several times now, so
Actually, let me. If the Weeblos want to exit, unless they want to watch the budget presentation, this is probably a good breaking point for you guys. You're welcome to stay for sure, but now we're stepping into a good chunk of time, chunk of meeting time. So we'll give them the opportunity to go. Thanks, guys, for coming out tonight.
These are the Weevils. I think it's a
as we've covered with the village board previously, the 2020 budget does maintain our core services and maintains we're pleased to report our bond rating is maintained. As you know from the discussion, we've had considerable success in changing our public safety pension funding policy to level off future contribution, and that was a considerable amount of lift by the Finance Committee, and we're very grateful to them for their work. We are approving operating budgets and fortifying reserves, and we are limiting or avoiding fee and tax increases to the extent that we can. In terms of our general fund overview, the budget is balanced, maintains the village's services, and provides for an additional $500,000 to the road infrastructure program. Enhances our investments in core engineering functions with more dollars dedicated to road resurfacing, $5.3 million than any time in the last 20 years when you combine both the road program and the road work we anticipate as part of phase 1 of our stormwater project. So as I said, it includes $2.75 million for the annual road program. That's approximately 28 blocks. Another $1.2 million for reconstruction of Central Avenue and $1.3 million for road resurfacing associated with the neighborhood storage project. Our goal is to complete the repairs of all the rated serious and very poor alleys, and we'll be enhancing funding for sidewalks, curbs, brick street maintenance, pavement marking, and crack sealing. We also have new annual funding for what was proved to be a very successful street patching program this year, and the Skokie Valley Trail and Skokie Lake intersection improvements are to be funded by general fund reserves. The tax levy that is included in the budget includes a relatively modest 1.43% increase to cover operations. That includes all the things that the village is doing along with its employee compensation and benefits other than pensions, which is levied separately. That is going up by about 0.75%. Our debt service is also fixed. That's at 0.12%. So that total was 2.3%, which is one of the lowest that we've had in a very long time. And it was a good opportunity, as the board agreed, to provide additional funding for road work that the residents have told us that they need. So the total increase with our new road funding is 4.99. In the water fund, we're pleased to report to you that there's no increase in water rates projected, and we will be continuing to make a substantial transfer to the general fund, which helps hold down the property tax levy. We include $5 million for the completion of the water plant electrical improvements, and that'll put us in a good position for this coming summer when North Main Utilities, Aqua, finally comes online as our new downstream wholesale customer, and that'll be about a 30% increase in our wholesale portfolio. So that'll be a very welcome revenue addition for the village that we're looking forward to in 2020. You have other water plant improvements there that we've reviewed, but again, the main takeaway is that the water rates will remain stable for the residents. In the sewer fund, the fee will increase by 4%, estimated impact of about $13 per resident. It includes a considerable amount of work, including these neighborhood storage improvements, sewer lining, stormwater pumping station improvements for the electrical equipment there, as well as sewer main repairs, maintenance, funding for our Rain Ready program, and for additional smoke testing. Total residential impact from the property tax increase, all total, will be about $90, $50 of it for roads and $40 for general operations. Water rate, no change, about $13 for the sewer rate. Stormwater fee, totally it'll be divided into 4 quarters on the regular bill, but it will be about a $144 increase. And that is really the quick summary of the budget that the board has reviewed to this point. If I can repay Trustee Kennedy's kind words for the staff, the board is the most integral part of preparing the budget with us. We depend on you for your feedback. We appreciate that every one of you took the opportunity to come in and meet with us for extended periods during the budget process. It was so helpful to us to have your thoughts to help us refine what we were doing, address the things that you thought needed to be addressed, and come up with a better product at the end of it. So we very much appreciate all the hard work that was put into it by the village board, and would like you to know how much we benefit from your guidance and your input. So thank you.
Any questions for the trustees, for the staff at this point in time? Like I said, we've all maybe questioned out, having done as many meetings on the budget as we have. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Just discussion. I will thank the staff as well for their efforts. It is a lot of work. We all know that. It's a very big document. And again, I will also thank the trustees. It does take significant time to get up to speed on the budget, and especially the new trustees. Thank you for putting in the time here. We had some very productive, very efficient meetings, and that's as a result of really spending the time reading it first, digesting it, and then also working with the staff through questions. You know, this is a very responsible budget. It maintains service levels, and it also includes significant investments in our municipal infrastructure. Notably, as Mr. Frenzer just mentioned, more than $5 million in total from all the different sources for roads. And that's the highest amount that the village has budgeted in any single year for roads for at least the past 20 years. And then we also have the first phase of the neighborhood stormwater improvement project coming, which is a significant amount of money as well. The property tax increase, I'm not sure it was broken down on these slides, but the property tax increase for general operations was only 1.43%, and that's really a reflection of how well the staff continues to manage the village. So this is a very good budget. I'm very pleased with it. And I'll open the floor if any of the other trustees would like to make any comments.
I would like to make a comment. It's not on my behalf. It's on behalf of Trustee Barrow. He contacted me earlier today and asked that I read the statement. Regarding the budget adoption, I favor greater board oversight regarding spending for the road program as well as SURF. Including such information in the weekly manager's memo or as a consent item does not always provide the background and detail I believe the board should have. I think that a regular report, perhaps monthly or quarterly, from the appropriate department head as to what amount was spent on what and what's expected for the following period would be valuable. We are committing a significant amount of funds to this, and I think the board should stay on top of this in a meaningful way. And I would just second his sentiment.
So noted. Staff, I think, hears that. Okay. Trustee
I'd like
Dodd.
to speak briefly. So first of all, I want to thank the staff as well for everything they've done. This is, I think, the third time I've gone through the budget process, and I think I might finally be getting it a little bit, which is scary. But I just hope all the residents in the community know how hard our staff works on behalf of us and how hard this board works on behalf of putting a budget together. And I think it's just, I don't think any resident would understand what happens behind the scenes in terms of making this happen, in terms of the number of hours a trustee spends, as well as significantly more hours on behalf of the staff. So I just want to say on behalf of every resident here, thank you all so much for your time and effort and getting us to a great place. I do have a couple reflections that I've shared with staff, but I want to kind of reiterate them. I have had a discussion with Trustee Barrow, so I was thankful that he brought it up, and I concur with him around just looking for some more reporting of some of these more significant things we're doing. And I think he's looking for reporting. What I think would be helpful, so, and this is just my perspective, would be maybe on a quarterly basis or something. We just get, Melinda does an amazing job giving us kind of a monthly review or sometimes a quarterly update. But I think it'd be, and we see piecemeal what's going into the SURF or what's being approved in terms of roads or whatever. But I think it'd be really nice to see, here's all the SURF projects that we are expected to be doing. Here's the timing of when we think we're going to purchase them. Here's the cost, and then when do we do it, as an example. And I'd say the same thing on the roads. Here's the roads we're planning to do. Here's where we're going out to bid. Just something, we see it, and so I want to acknowledge the staff is doing a great job notifying the board of what's happening. It's just coming to us at different meetings and at different points. And so I think a summary, and then just a discussion. And part of why I'd say a discussion is just, it's our role to be communicating those things to our community. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us to be doing that, because we're doing amazing things, we're doing amazing work, and we should be sharing that with our community. So, however we decide, I just figured, and like I said, I've talked to the staff about it, but I wanted those in the room and those watching to hear that as well. The other two things are much briefer, which is just things that I shared in the budgeting process. One is, I think we should continue as a board to look at our reserve balance. And it's something that I will be looking at as the year, as we progress to the next year's budget and things like that. So I just want to, I think we're doing a great job in terms of spending money on roads and things like that. But I think our reserve balance is growing, and I think it's something we need to be aware of. And I want the residents in the community who have raised this issue to me to hear that I've heard their feedback, and it's something I'm aware of. And then the third thing would just be the SURF policy, and whether we have a policy in place of how much goes in the SURF, and it's just a matter of whether we need to, given what could be happening in terms of development, or what we hope could be happening in terms of development over the next year or two, should be we looking at putting an upper limit on the SURF, and it's just something I'd at least like us to discuss again sometime during the year. Otherwise, that was all I had to say. And Bridget and Melinda and John, who are here, not up here, thank you so much.
Trustee Kurzman, Trustee Plunkett. Please, Trustee Kurzman.
Yeah, thank you. And Trustee Kennedy, thank you for your eloquent opening remarks. I echo your thoughts about staff very much. I do scratch my head about Trustee Barrow's comments. I do feel like staff is very communicative about the work that's done throughout the village, and I don't want any of the feedback to suggest otherwise to the public. I hope Trustee Barrow takes advantage of the open invitation that I have had, for example, from staff, that whenever I have had a question or a concern about projects going on, that is available to get an answer, and it's usually very, very swift and very, very detailed. I just might want to offer a counterbalance perspective to that issue. I live off of Locust Road, and I just finished a number of months of that project being taken place, and I thought one of the best pieces of feedback I got from residents was just how communicative the village was. And I think that project was done, and it certainly wasn't fast enough, but it was certainly done with excellence, and I think the community only had positive things to say. So I just encourage all of my colleagues to, if they feel like they need more information, I'm sure staff would oblige you. I feel obliged by it. I think this budget was the most challenging of the 3 years that I've had here. There was a higher degree of difficulty, is the way I've sort of coined it, and I think staff had to work harder. Competing interests, a lot of interests, all really important, and I think they did a fantastic job balancing all the different priorities and getting us moving forward with them. And so, while 4.99 is the biggest of the 3 years that I've been, on serving on the board, I do feel like it reflects priorities, and I feel like it also reflects discretion about how far we could take those priorities. And, that also, to Manager Frenzer's comments, that came from a lot of hard work and dialogue with members of the board. But to this budget, I'm very very supportive of it, and I look forward to working on next year's budget and having the same type of constructive dialogue that we've had so far. So I salute the staff and thank you very much for the work that went into it.
Wow, already looking towards next year's budget. That's impressive. Thank you, Trustee Kurtzman. Trustee Plunkett.
Sure. Well, I can say that this year's budget was discussed last year, and we knew that there were going to be a lot more expenses that we wanted to have. And I specifically want to point out pensions, because I think most people know that pensions in the state of Illinois is almost a dirty word. And the fact that our pension increase is only 0.75%, that was because of staff and the Finance Committee looking at pensions, trying to find creative ways to pay that, because we owe a lot more than that in pensions, and we have drawn down our reserves to pay for that, and we have a plan over the next few years to pay for pensions and to make that not such a spike in our property taxes. And I think staff and this board has really tried to decrease the property tax levy increase as much as possible. The 1.43% in operations is really extraordinary. That's, everyone has a cost of living increase at least, and, that is less. So it's going to be an exciting year. Some people, there might be a few headaches because of all the construction, but I think in the end, people will appreciate that the roads are better, that the sewer system is well on its way, and it's going to be an action year that has been, we've been discussing for some time now.
Thank you, Trustee Plunkett. Any further comments or discussion? Okay, so I will ask the clerk to please call the roll on the motion to adopt ordinance 2019-0-68, adopting the fiscal year 2020 annual budget.
Trustee Kennedy?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman?
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett?
Aye.
President Polinsky?
Aye, so the motion carries. The ordinance adopting the 2020 fiscal year budget has been approved. We'll move on to the Administration Committee. Trustee Dodd.
All items listed on consent.
So Municipal Services Committee, Trustee Sullivan isn't here, so with Trustee Sullivan out, I was going to ask Trustee Kurzman, please, to handle the Municipal Services Committee report and make the motion on the item which was not on consent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I move to remove from the table item 6.41, approval to waive competitive bids for the purpose to negotiate contract terms with Storm Trap for the neighborhood storage projects Phase 1.
Okay, so there's a motion to remove it from the table. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, so it's been removed from the table. And if you would now make a motion on the approval?
Yeah, I'd like to move to approve the contract terms as laid out in our board packet for our work with Storm Trap.
Yeah, actually, Trustee Kurzman, clarify, this is just to waive, this isn't for the contract, this is just to waive the competitive bid.
Okay, I move to waive the competitive bid for the purpose of negotiating contract terms with Storm Trap for the neighborhood storage projects Phase 1.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Trustee Barrow, at the last meeting, had asked for this item to be removed from the consent agenda. He's not here tonight, but he did offer up the following commentary on his request. Actually, I think, Trustee Kennedy, between you and me, we've talked more than Trustee Barrow normally talks in a meeting. So,
I believe that's right.
So this is what Trustee Barrow said. I asked in our last meeting that the current item, 6.41, be removed from the consent agenda. I did that not because I had a concern for what was being requested, but because I thought that authorization to negotiate a no-bid contract of that amount, I believe is what he meant, should be discussed in an open meeting and approved openly. I will say the same if the contract itself is presented for board approval. So, Mr. Stein, my understanding is that we're not approving a contract tonight, and that when the contract is presented, the plan is for Ms. Berger and others to sort of walk through the rationale for approaching it this way.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? Okay.
That is absolutely correct.
So tonight, all we're doing is providing authority for you to have for Ms. Berger and others to have a conversation with Storm Trap, and then when the contract actually comes before the board, there will be a full and fulsome discussion of this topic.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. So with that said, Is there any further discussion from the board? Because I think Trustee Barrow's concern will be addressed when we actually approve the contract.
I have a
Trustee
question.
Dodd, yes.
Why, I asked this question, I know, to Bridget earlier, but I guess I'd like to, why do we need to approve the ability for Bridget to get a bid on a project? Why are we, I mean,
So we're not approving staff to get a bid, we're actually approving staff to waive bids and enter into a direct negotiation.
Is that a state law?
So it's a state law that requires, and including, it's also in our village code, that requires a waiver of bids by a 2/3 majority of the board. So in order for us to, it's a two-step process. In order for the staff to begin negotiations outside of the bidding circle, if you will, we need authority to do so. And once we get that authority, then we can essentially negotiate the contract.
and you need authority to do that because you're only going to talk to one, one potential company?
In this particular case, yes, we're only talking.
Okay.
But
only-
even,
we
but even
have-
if you were waiving, if we waive the formal bid process as outlined in our ordinance in any way, we would need to, they would need, you would need to
Yeah,
come here.
even if we were to talk to 4 companies outside of bid process, the waiver is still required by the village board. In this particular case, we are discussing contract terms with one particular company.
But why would you waive a competitive bid process if you're talking to 4 different providers, like you?
Because if you didn't want to do a formal bidding process, I was just giving an
Oh,
example.
this is not going to be a formal bidding process?
Okay,
No.
let me,
Sorry.
No.
all right, so maybe I'm not explaining it correctly. You are allowing the village staff to get away from the formal bidding process. We are not following the formal bidding process with this waiver. So you are approving the village staff to enter into a contract, or I'm sorry, to discuss contracts with one particular vendor. That's not the bidding process. The bidding process would be to submit a document and a bunch of companies would provide responses to that. Instead, we're circumventing that because of the nature of this, and it's all laid out in the memo,
Okay.
as to, and for timing, as to allowing us to have a direct negotiation with the one company that we know can do the work.
Okay.
Right, but the point is, we're not approving the results of that negotiation.
Not at all.
We're just
That's
allowing the
coming back to
conversation to
you.
take place.
Hopefully that will come back to you on December 10th, but maybe some other time. All this does is allow us to do that work and then bring back a contract to you for your approval. If you don't like the contract and want to go back, you deny that and
Right,
and go back to bids.
and the rationale for doing it that way and the result of doing it that way will be fully discussed prior to us, not on consent, fully discussed, presentation prior to us approving the
That's
contract.
absolutely the
And
intent
yeah,
with
that's-
Trustee Barrow
that's our
not being here
request,
tonight.
Right,
We wanted him to
that's the
be present
staff's
for that.
request. Or that's the board's request of the staff.
Okay, so I would just like to add one more thing, which is just, I want to thank Trustee Barrow, who's not here, for bringing this up, because I do think I have had a discussion with our legal counsel today, just to better understand what things go on consent and what things don't go on consent, and understand our ordinances and things like that. And I understand, obviously, that generally things are on consent when there's when there's expected to be board agreement and no debate, and when it's routine business. And I just think this project that we're embarking on isn't routine business. It's the largest infrastructure project that we have ever done in our community. And so for that reason, I think it is important, even though we support this, for us to not consider this to be, for me at least, not to consider this to be routine business, because I just think it's really important to our residents. We're adding a new we're adding a new fee. It's going to be disruptive. It's expensive and things like that. So I have learned through this process in terms of that, and I wanted the rest of the board members to know that because of that, things like of this nature in my mind are not routine business, and it's something that I will be looking at as we go forward over the next couple of years and do this project. So.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the bottom line is, in general, the staff and I decide what's on consent. And, of course, any member of the audience, as our policies are, any member of the audience and any trustee can certainly pull something off of consent if they disagree. So, but your point is noted, so.
Yeah, I think I would second what she's saying and what Trustee Barrow is saying, in the sense that I would hope that going forward, it's a policy that when we approve something like a no-bid process, that we do that openly, as opposed to putting it on
Everything we do is open, whether we talk about it or not, everything is open.
I understand.
All our documents are open, all our meetings are open, so the suggestion that there isn't transparency is troublesome. The suggestion that the board would want to discuss it is not troublesome. So,
Well, maybe that's a better way to put it then. I'm not suggesting there isn't transparency, but I think for members of the public, the understanding of what the consent agenda is a little hazier than it is for us.
Yeah,
And so I would not put things on the consent agenda if there's any question about whether there would be public interest in the subject.
yeah, I mean, there are 2 paragraphs that describe the consent agenda right here,
Yeah,
so.
I know.
And I appreciate that. In an
I'm
effort
certainly-
I mean, different communities use the consent agenda in different ways. And in an effort to be efficient in our meetings, when I don't think there's going to be discussion, we put it on the consent agenda. If I think there's discussion, we take it off. But again, your feedback on that is welcome, and I've heard your feedback on both yours and Trustee Dodd's feedback on sort of the bigger stormwater projects. We'd like to take them off. What I don't want to do in our meeting is have 30 minutes of conversation on something that we didn't need to have conversation on. On the other hand, we should probably err on the side of, if we think people want to have a conversation, we should have it. So, but again, there is no, just because it's on consent doesn't mean there isn't going to be a conversation. It just takes one of us to drive that.
Oh, we understand.
So, okay. Any further discussion on this item? Okay. So it has been moved and it's been seconded. The clerk, would you please call the roll on the motion?
Trustee Kennedy?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman?
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett?
Aye.
President Belinsky?
Aye. Okay, so the motion carries. It needed 5 votes, correct?
Carried.
So the approval to waive the competitive bidding process for this particular purpose has been approved, but the contract has not been approved. That will be presented to us at a later meeting.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll move on to item 6.5, which is the Public Safety Standing Committee report. Trustee Kurzman.
No report.
Next one is the Judiciary Committee. Trustee Plunkett.
No report?
Next up is item 6.7, reports from our special committees. There are no reports tonight. Item 7 is new business. There's no additional new business to discuss. Item 8 is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2 sub C sub 1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, would the clerk please call the roll on the motion to adjourn to executive session?
Trustee Kennedy?
Aye.
Trustee Dodd?
Aye.
Trustee Kurzman?
Aye.
Trustee Plunkett?
Aye.
President Belinsky?
Aye, so the motion carries. We stand adjourned to executive session.